Heard that some of them have been asked to submit documents to be vetted. You're not at that level yet.
Well, so look, they've asked us for a number of things. I think that a number of people have been asked to submit this and that.
Like your taxes or something?
I don't know everything that they've been asked. But yeah, I mean, certainly, like, have you committed a crime? Have you ever lied about this? Certainly you have those conversations, but I think a lot of people are having those conversations.
Like maybe the Trump team is asking VP hopefuls like JD Vance if they ever committed a crime or lied about this or that, because in order for them to be a good fit with the lying and criminally minded former president, they need him to answer yes.
Judge inside, his daughter is making millions of dollars running against Donald Trump, raising money for Donald Trump's political opponents. The number 3 person to the Department of Justice, Biden's Department of Justice, left to become a local prosecutor to go after Donald Trump. And of course, there's Alvin Bragg, a Soros-funded prosecutor who promised to go after Donald Trump and now is doing exactly that.
Looks like JD had to sadly say no to the criminal prosecution part, but he is looking to make up for it by lying about Trump's criminal behavior being weaponized, along with the rest of the NPCs in red ties outside of his courtroom.
But again, you came up and you defended him, and you stood with others, all of you all dressed like Donald Trump, looking like you come from New York. Remember the Rockettes at Radio City across the street? All of y'all in uniform and all. You stood up for him.
We'll get back to Byron Donalds, but JD took it up a notch by denying Trump's affinity for fellow bigots, because he figured that would definitely score some points.
I'd say that President Trump is one of the few people who's actually condemned both sides. In other words, he condemned the protest in Charlottesville to the extent that it got violent. He also noted, honestly, that there were peaceful protesters in Charlottesville, too. He's also condemned the protests that have broken out across our college campuses. So again, I think that if you actually look at what President Trump has said, he's making a reasonable observation that there's a ridiculous media double standard, but he has, I think, the courage to condemn acts of anti-Semitism, whether they're coming from the perceived right or the perceived left.
The courage to support Nazis, chanting that Jews won't replace them in America, is the kind of over-the-top signal to Trump that Vance thinks will speak to his heart. But then again, like any potential running mate, he's got to act like he doesn't really care, despite all this effort that he's putting into it.
So I think we need to help Donald Trump get across the finish line. That's why I've spent a fair amount of time with him the past couple of weeks, helping him raise some resources, showing up in support in New York. But it's all about getting him elected president. I actually don't care that much who the vice president is, because Trump's ultimately going to govern.
They're saying it all out loud. It doesn't even matter who his VP is. That person is just a useful puppet. Trump will be the one ruling without any input from anyone else. That's the lesson he learned during his time in the White House, that he had a few Republicans with a limit to their complete fealty to his madness. So he's in search of an administration full of mindless yes men, and he's got no issue saying so.
And then the New York Times did a fake story today, big front page, that JD wasn't sure if he wanted my support. JD is kissing my ass. He wants my support. I'm 18 points up. If I was 18 points down, he wouldn't want my support. I'll tell you, Jim Jordan wants my support, and he's doing just fine, right? No, these are fake people. These are dishonest. These are very dishonest people.
Damn. I guess JD's other plan is to prove he's willing to be publicly humiliated for the job, too. It's sad that there's no limit to their fealty for a guy that openly demeans them on a regular basis. It actually disarms them from ever publicly changing their minds about his wild behavior when or if they ever reach that limit. Because if they ever do, he brings up their past pledges of loyalty and bludgeons them with it, killing their newfound opposition. Just ask Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Mitch McConnell, Chris Christie, Bill Barr, Jeff Sessions, and countless others.
Protecting law and justice is job one for President Trump. He will not target his political opponents. He will fire Merrick Garland and restore confidence in the Department of Justice.
For real, Joe, he will not target his political opponents, when this week all he said was, oh, I might have to get revenge. Come on.
Jonathan, I served with Tim Scott. Every time Donahue speaks, I don't recognize who he is. To Andrew's point, I don't know who the VP pick is going to be, but it's going to be somebody who's going to have to lie about the election and say that Donald Trump is a victim right now of a weaponized Justice Department. That's the job requirement.
They'll have to lie about the election and say Trump is the victim of a weaponized justice system. Enter VP contestant number 2, Byron Donalds, with his audition tape.
Where's the crime? There is no crime. The only crime that's happening here is this Democrat judge and the Democrat Party prosecuting their political rival right in the middle of a presidential election. The crime here is that the issues facing our nation are not being addressed by the Democrats, but they want to go after Donald Trump.
Let's just be real about this. The entire reason why these charges were brought now, why this case was brought now, was to interfere with the 2024 presidential election. It was to interfere. It was to trap Donald Trump in the courtroom.
I think it's going to backfire to a large degree. The American people understand when something is legitimate, when something is fair, and when somebody basically has an axe to grind. And this is nothing more than a political axe to grind from the radical left and Joe Biden.
Say what you will about the merits of the case. We have never in American history had prosecutions of the leading presidential candidate of any major party in the United States. This has never happened.
The American people understand that we need a change. And when they look at the fact that Donald Trump is being brought up on these stupid trials, these things that make no sense.
Oh, no, the lawfare is completely backfired. I mean, Jack, I tried to tell him a year ago, don't do this. Don't try to criminalize Donald Trump. If you don't like him, don't like him. But when you try to criminalize somebody with BS, Americans recognize that as being completely unfair, completely political, and they're going to reject it.
But what we have seen out of the Department of Justice led by Merrick Garland, out of Alvin Bragg in Lower Manhattan, out of Fani Willis in Georgia, is that they do not care about the norms of our election process. They just want to get Donald Trump.
The hardest part for each of these guys is trying to make themselves stand out from each other when they've all been given the same script of election denialism and talk of a weaponized justice system. Even old discarded Trump opponents like Marco Rubio are submitting their tapes.
There was some reporting this week that you are possibly under consideration to be Donald Trump's running mate. I don't put a lot of stock in this reporting right now. We're early. But you said it would be an honor to be offered a spot on his ticket. Really?
Yeah, I think anyone who's offered the opportunity to serve this country as vice president should be honored by the opportunity to do it if you're in public service. I'm in the Senate because I want to serve the country. Being vice president is an important way to serve the country. But I've also been clear, I've never talked to Donald Trump. I've never talked to anybody on his team or family or inner circle about vice president. That's a decision he's going to make. He has plenty of really good people to pick from.
I mean, the reason why I ask is, look what happened to the last guy. A mob stormed the Capitol, literally calling to hang Mike Pence.
Listen,
and Trump defended those chants of hanging Mike Pence.
I will tell you this, that when Donald Trump was president of the United States, this country was safer, it was more prosperous. We had relations, for example, in a part of the world that I care about called the Western Hemisphere that were very strong. We had a lot of good things done there. I think the country and the world was a better place when he was president.
So to the 2024 version of Marco Rubio, it doesn't matter what the candidate believes in, what his plans are, or how much he's failed in the past, or apparently how much he loudly and proudly beefed with Trump. Abandoning all of your principles and kissing his ass is paramount, because it's an honor to be asked to be the running mate with a guy that he had this many revealing fights with.
Little Marco.
Donald Trump likes to sue people. He should sue whoever did that to his face.
He couldn't be elected dog catcher.
There is no way we are going to allow a con artist to take over the conservative movement, and Donald Trump is a con artist.
He has conned the people of Florida into voting for him.
If he hadn't inherited $200 million, you know where Donald Trump would be right now? Selling watches in Manhattan.
Rubio, total lightweight, and little mouth on him. Bing, bing, bing.
He's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who's 5'2". Have you seen his hands? They're like this. And you know what they say about men with small hands?
He has really large ears, the biggest ears I've ever seen.
If he builds the wall the way he built Trump Towers, he'll be using illegal immigrant labor to do it.
I think he's a highly overrated person.
Donald is not going to make America great. He's going to make America orange.
Lightweight Marco Rubio was working hard last night. The problem is he's a choker, and once a choker, always a choker. Mr. Meltdown.
Just like Trump Tower, he must have hired a foreign worker to do his own tweets.
Marco is not a negotiator. I watched him melt down, and I'll tell you, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen.
He doesn't sweat because his pores are clogged from the spray tan that he used.
I have a policy question for you, sir.
Let's see if he answers it.
I will. Don't worry about it, Marco. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, little Marco. I will.
All right, well, let's hear Big Don.
Donald. Don't worry about it, Don't worry about it, little Marco.
Gentlemen, gentlemen.
You ought to show up.
Gentlemen, you got to do better than this.
This guy has the #1.
Mr. Trump, may I ask you, Mr. Trump, I'd like to ask you a policy question.
None of it matters. None of the details that they both claim are disqualifying for the other to serve. None of the disrespect and name-calling. None of it matters. They just expect voters to either think they didn't mean it then or they don't mean the nice things that they say now. But why would they trust anything that they'll ever say or do when it's been proven that at some point, all of this was some BS? Trump's last actor that landed the gig of sycophantic running mate hit his limit at preserving the peaceful transfer of power. And if his boss had his way, it would have resulted in his head being slipped into a noose. It's a lesson that this new crop has learned from. But what they've learned is that their life is safe, as long as they have no limit.
Based upon the differences the president and I still have over my constitutional duties on January 6th, but also, as you said, based upon how I see the president shying away from our commitment as leader of the free world, being prepared to ignore the national debt, now even walking away from a commitment to the right to life at the national level. I've just made it clear that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump in this campaign, but I'll keep my vote on my own, and I'll vote according to my conscience in private, just like every American will.